I stared at the message. 4 lines. I'm done. The divorce papers are on the way. I've taken my half. Please don't contact me. I checked our bank account. It was empty. My husband of 12 years had disappeared without a word. But what he didn't know was that the woman he left behind had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. My name is Rachel. I'm 38 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed I had built something solid, something worth holding on to. I met Connor when I was just 24. He was magnetic, the kind of man who walked into a room and made everyone turn their heads. He had ambition in his eyes and a confidence that made you feel like anything was possible. I was just starting my career in graphic design, freelancing out of coffee shops and chasing clients on Craigslist. But he made me feel like I wasn't just chasing dreams. I was building something real, with him. When Connor decided to get into real estate, he had nothing but big ideas and charm. No capital, no contacts, just drive. He talked about building an empire. I believed in him so completely that when he needed money to buy his first fixer-upper, I didn't hesitate. I cashed out the inheritance my grandmother had left me, $18,000, and gave it to him with a kiss and a promise. That was the beginning. We struggled in the early years. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a shower that leaked no matter how many times we called the landlord. We shared a car, split meals, and counted quarters to do. Laundry. But we were happy, or so I thought. Every little milestone felt like a win. The first house sale. The first year we broke 6 figures. The weekend getaway we splurged on after working 70-hour weeks. We talked about the future. Kids, moving to a bigger house, maybe even opening a joint business someday. We shared everything. Our accounts, our passwords, our calendars. He'd bring me coffee in bed on Sundays, and I'd sneak notes into his briefcase with dumb doodles and I love you written in Sharpie. It wasn't flashy, but it felt real, grounded. When he made it big in real estate, I was proud. I watched him transform from a hustling rookie to a sought-after agent closing million-dollar deals. And when people asked him the secret to his success, he'd smile and say, "Rachel believed in me before anyone else did." God, I held onto those words like a lifeline. We bought our dream house 3 years ago, a 2-story colonial with ivy crawling up the porch and a cozy breakfast nook that I turned into my home office. We adopted a golden retriever named Milo. We even picked out names for future children. Ava if it was a girl, Jonah if it was a boy. To everyone on the outside, we were that couple. The one who'd made it. The one people envied. But underneath the surface, tiny cracks had started to form. I just didn't see them for what they were. I didn't want to, because when you've given someone your entire heart, the idea that they could destroy it? It's too terrifying to imagine. But I was about to learn that the life I thought I'd built with Connor was never mine to begin with. It was a facade, one I helped paint brick by brick, blind to the fact that the foundation had already started to crumble. The first signs weren't dramatic. They were small, so subtle they could be explained away. A forgotten date night here, a vague excuse there. Things that, at first, felt like ordinary life slipping into routine. After all, we'd been married for over a decade. Passion cools, people get busy. That's what I told myself. But slowly, something in Connor changed. He started staying later at work. At first, it made sense. The real estate market was hot, he said. Deals were closing fast, and competition was brutal. He had to be all in. I understood that. I'd always admired his work ethic. But then it wasn't just late nights. It was weekends. Business trips that weren't on our shared calendar. Phone calls he'd take in the garage with the door closed. When I'd ask who it was, he'd smile and say, "Just work stuff, babe. You wouldn't be interested." That was new. He used to tell me everything. Then there was his phone. He used to leave it lying around, screen up. Now, he kept it in his pocket at all times, screen down if he ever set it on the counter. I noticed the new password, and the fact that he started taking it into the bathroom with him. Every time. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe he was stressed, maybe he needed space, maybe I was just being insecure, But the distance between us was growing. Physically, emotionally, intimacy had all but vanished. We went from cuddling on the couch to sitting on opposite ends in silence, both staring at our phones. His eyes stopped lighting up when I walked into the room. Our conversations became transactional. Who's picking up groceries? What's due on the mortgage? Did you walk the dog? And then came the gym. Out of nowhere, Connor became obsessed with his appearance. He got a personal trainer, started counting macros, bought a whole new wardrobe. I joked once, trying to impress someone, with a playful nudge. He just smirked and said, "Just want to look good. Nothing wrong with that, right?" Right. Nothing wrong, except I felt like I was being left behind in our own marriage. The affection, the little gestures, the easy laughter, they were gone. Still, I clung to hope. I suggested we take a weekend trip, just the two of us. Get away from the noise, reconnect. He said he couldn't. Too much going on at work. Then I found out he spent that weekend at a spa resort in Napa. Alone, he claimed. Just needed a break. I wanted to believe him. I desperately wanted to believe. The man I'd loved for 12 years wouldn't lie to me like that. But in my gut, I knew. Something was very, very wrong. I started having nightmares. Waking up in cold sweats, feeling like a stranger was sleeping next to me. I'd watch him sleep and wonder, who is this man? Where did the Connor I knew go? I stopped eating. My work began to suffer. My clients noticed I was distracted. I couldn't focus on anything but the invisible weight pressing down on me. And then came the final crack, the one that broke everything open. It was a Wednesday. I came home early from a client meeting and found Connor in the kitchen, quickly hanging up. A call the second I walked in. He didn't even pretend to be warm. Just looked at me and asked, "Do you need something?" That night, he didn't come to bed. Said he was sleeping in the guest room. Said he needed space. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, counting the number of times I'd ignored my instincts over the last year, and then, less than a week later, he sent the text that shattered it all. It happened on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning where everything seems ordinary until your world implodes. I was standing in the kitchen, half-dressed, sipping coffee, and scrolling through emails. Milo was curled up at my feet. The sun was pouring in through the bay window, and for a second, I let myself feel normal. Safe. Like maybe I'd just imagined it all. Then my phone buzzed. One message, from Connor. I opened it without thinking. This isn't working anymore. I filed for divorce. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'll be moving my things out this weekend. I've already spoken to a lawyer. That was it. No conversation, no apology, no warning, 12 years, reduced to a 47-word text message. I stood there frozen, reading it over and over, thinking maybe it was a joke. Maybe he'd hit send by mistake. Maybe this was meant for someone else. But no, my name was on the lease. On the marriage certificate, on the mortgage, this was real. I dropped my coffee. The mug shattered on the tile and Milo jumped up, barking. But I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. How do you process the fact that your husband, the man you built a life with, the man who promised to love and protect you, just ended? Your marriage like he was canceling a gym membership? Panic set in. I opened our banking app. I don't know what made me do it, but some instinct told me something wasn't right. My stomach dropped. The joint account was empty, not low. Not missing a few hundred. Empty, gone, all of it. Over $142,000, money we'd saved together, including the emergency fund, the house repair savings, and the money from a recent investment, Connor convinced me to liquidate. I clicked through transaction, histories in disbelief. The transfers were spread out over the past 6 weeks. Small at first, $3,000 here, $5,000 there, then larger amounts, $20,000, $35,000, all moved into an account I didn't recognize, an account in his name only. I couldn't stop shaking. Rage, grief, disbelief, everything hit at once. I tried calling him, straight to voicemail. I texted him, begging for an explanation. I told him I didn't understand, that we needed to talk like adults. No reply. By 5 p.m., I got served. A courier knocked on my door and handed me a thick envelope. Divorce papers, already signed and filed. Connor had planned this, carefully, strategically. While I was sleeping beside him, cooking his dinners, folding his laundry, he was emptying our account and lining up lawyers. While I was suggesting counseling, he was checking out emotionally, financially, and legally. And the most brutal part? He thought I'd just take it. He thought I'd roll over quietly, maybe cry, maybe vent to a friend. But ultimately, he assumed I'd let him walk away with everything, without a fight. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Because while he may have blindsided me, he just lit the fuse on something he couldn't control, and what came next, he never saw it coming. I cried. For one night, I let it all out. The betrayal, the humiliation, the gut-punch realization that the man I loved was nothing more than a polished fraud. I screamed into a pillow, curled up in a ball on the bathroom floor, and let the grief pour out of me like poison. But when the sun came up the next morning, something shifted. Grief gave way to clarity. I looked at myself in the mirror, eyes swollen and red, and said the words out loud. You picked the wrong woman to screw over. Because here's what Connor had forgotten. I wasn't the wide-eyed girl who cashed out her inheritance for his first investment. I was the woman who stood by him through every deal, every downturn, every sleepless night. I built him. I helped him climb, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. And now? He thought he could just take everything and walk away? Not a chance. I made 3 phone calls that morning. The first was to a lawyer. But not just any lawyer, a divorce attorney known for being a shark in heels. Camille Novak, a woman who made Wall Street execs weep in court. I told her everything, down to the stolen funds, the hidden account, the sudden text message. She didn't flinch. Her exact words, "Let's burn him legally and leave nothing but ashes." The second call was to a forensic accountant. I needed to trace the money. Every cent Connor had siphoned. Camille set me up with a firm that specialized in uncovering marital fraud. They dug deep, bank transfers, shell accounts, even hidden crypto wallets. And they found it all. Turns out, Connor had been moving money into a personal account tied to a woman's name. Her name was Melissa, and just like that, the third call made itself. To Melissa. She was a paralegal, 10 years younger than me. Blonde, pretty, soft-spoken. I remembered meeting her once at Connor's firm's holiday party. She complimented my dress. I called her office directly and introduced myself as Connor's wife. She went silent. Then she hung up. Coward. It didn't matter. The damage was done. I knew the truth now, and with every piece of evidence we gathered, my case grew stronger, and his world began to shrink. Meanwhile, I took back my own power. I froze the remaining accounts. I filed an emergency motion to block the sale of our house. I made sure every business partner he'd ever charmed got wind of what he'd done. I didn't scream. I didn't plead. I built a case so airtight he couldn't wiggle through it with a chainsaw. Connor had assumed I'd be too heartbroken to fight back, that I'd curl up, cry into my pillow, and let him play the victim while he skipped off into the sunset with his new arm candy and my money. But what he didn't count on was that the quiet wife who made his lunches, managed his invoices, and played the part of the supportive spouse was also a strategist, was also a survivor, was also the one who held the receipts. And as Camille filed our court documents and our investigator uncovered even more financial deceit, I made a promise to myself. Connor may have thrown the first punch, but I was going to throw the last one, and when it landed, he'd never forget it. Court dates aren't dramatic like they are in movies. They're slow, cold, procedural, but sometimes justice isn't loud. It's surgical, precise, devastating. Connor walked into that courtroom in a tailored suit, grinning, like he was the victim. He didn't even look at me, not once. Melissa sat in the back, pretending to be invisible, but I saw her. She couldn't hold eye contact either. My lawyer, Camille Novak, was a vision in black. Calm, collected, lethal. She had 3 thick binders, color-coded tabs, and a flash drive full of damning evidence. Connor's attorney, a smug, overconfident man who clearly underestimated me, opened with a statement about irreconcilable differences and how my emotional instability had made the marriage impossible. He painted Connor as a man trying to escape a bitter, controlling wife. Camille let him talk. Then she stood up and tore him apart, piece by piece. First came the financial records, every transfer, every business trip that ended in a resort charge with Melissa's name on the spa receipt. Camille had photos, timestamps, even matching dates from Instagram, where Melissa accidentally geotagged herself in places Connor claimed he was working. Then came the emails and texts, ones he thought he deleted. Our forensic team had recovered them, messages where he talked about getting rid of her and keeping the cash before she notices. The judge didn't even blink. Then Camille dropped the big one, the account where he'd funneled over $140,000 from our joint savings. She didn't just show the account. She showed how he forged my electronic signature to authorize the withdrawal. That turned it from sneaky to criminal. Suddenly, Connor's smirk faded. His lawyer leaned over, whispering urgently. Connor's face went pale. Camille asked for the court to freeze his personal assets, seize the fraudulent account, and launch a motion for financial misconduct, which, if granted, meant I could walk away with not just my half, but significantly more. At one point, Connor stood up and barked, "This is ridiculous!" The judge silenced him immediately. The court wasn't buying his hurt husband act anymore. When Camille finished, the judge spoke directly to Connor. "What you've done isn't just unethical, it borders on criminal fraud. This court does not take kindly to spouses who weaponize money and deceit during divorce proceedings." The ruling? I was awarded 72% of all marital assets. Connor was ordered to repay the $140,000 within 30 days or face civil penalties and seizure of property. Was granted sole ownership of the house, and Connor was slapped with a formal complaint to the state board overseeing his real estate license. But that wasn't the end. Camille calmly slid one last document across the table to Connor's lawyer. It was the notice of intent to press charges for forgery and marital financial fraud. Connor's jaw clenched. Melissa stood up and walked out. Poetic. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just stood there, tall, still, quiet, and watched as everything Connor tried to steal came crashing down around him. He thought he could erase me. He didn't realize I was made of steel. After the courtroom storm passed, I stood in the ruins of what used to be my life, and for the first time in months, I could finally breathe. Not because the pain was gone, not because the betrayal didn't still sting, but because I had survived. And now, it was time to rebuild, did I? First, I didn't know where to start. The house felt like a museum of false memories. Every corner, every drawer, every framed picture whispered lies. But instead of letting it haunt me, I stripped it down. The day Connor was court-ordered to return the remaining money, I took a hammer and demolished the kitchen backsplash we installed together. That same week, I painted the walls bright white, tore up the floors, and gutted the bedroom. Melissa's perfume still lingered on the guest pillows. I burned them. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming every inch of my life. With the settlement money and what I recovered, I opened a business, something I had dreamed of years ago but never had the freedom or support to pursue. Boutique consulting firm for women navigating divorce and financial abuse. I called it Ash and Grace. We didn't just help with legal logistics, we helped women rebuild from the inside out. Housing, therapy, career planning, custody prep, security. I hired a small but fierce team, survivors, professionals, and advocates. What started as 3 clients in the first month became 40 by the third. Apparently, I wasn't alone. So many. Women had stories just like mine, different faces, different lies, but the same gut-wrenching betrayal. They were told to stay quiet, to be civil, to move on. I told them something different. You're not broken, you're waking up. I became someone I barely recognized, and I loved her, strong, grounded, kind but unshakable. 3. Community rallied around my work. I was invited to speak at conferences, featured in a local magazine, even got a call from a national women's finance group asking me to lead a workshop on reclaiming power after betrayal. And as for Connor, he lost more than money. His reputation collapsed. Melissa left him 2 months after the court hearing. Turns out it's hard to keep a relationship going when your partner is a disgraced fraud under state investigation. He tried to reach out once, an email that simply said, "Can we talk? I miss you." I didn't respond. I just forwarded it to Camille and added, "Please keep this on file." I didn't need closure from him. I was my own closure. Every morning I woke up, walked into the office I built from nothing, and smiled knowing that he tried to bury me. And instead he planted something unstoppable. This wasn't the life I had planned. It was better. Because when everything burned down, I didn't just rise from the ashes. I rebuilt the fire. You think when you win in court, it's over. It's not. Connor may have lost the battle in the courtroom, but he hadn't accepted defeat. Not really. See, narcissists don't collapse gracefully. They spiral. And Connor? He went down swinging. First, he tried to appeal the asset division, claimed unfair bias, and that I'd manipulated the judge by playing the victim. His appeal was denied. Then he tried a character smear campaign online. A few anonymous blog posts popped up accusing me of being emotionally unstable, unfaithful, and mentally unfit. Camille traced the IP addresses right back to a co-working space Connor rented under his business. The court slapped him with a defamation warning. One more step, and he'd be hit with a lawsuit he couldn't weasel out of. But the final straw? He tried to hide assets again, this time through a silent partner in a fake LLC out of state. A desperate move, clumsy, and frankly, insulting. He underestimated me. Again. Camille and my forensic accountant found the discrepancies in days. They documented it meticulously. Emails, transfers, contracts with no dates, sudden company listings with no staff. It was a sloppy con. And that's when we realized this wasn't over. It was war. So I stopped playing checkers and started playing chess. We filed a motion for contempt of court, laying out the new fraud in black and white. The judge, already unimpressed with Connor, scheduled an emergency hearing. I remember sitting in that courtroom, watching him sweat. He looked smaller this time. The confident smirk was gone, replaced by frantic whispers to his new lawyer. His third one, by the way. Camille didn't even need to raise her voice. She laid out the timeline, the documents, the blatant violation of the original court order. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Your Honor, this is not a case of ignorance. This is a pattern of calculated deceit. My client has complied at every stage. Mr. Whitmore continues to treat the legal system as a suggestion, not a mandate." The judge nodded slowly and leaned forward. "Mr. Whitmore, your financial misconduct is no longer civil. It's approaching criminal. You are hereby fined for contempt, and we are referring this case to the district attorney's office for further investigation." Boom, check. He was stunned. Frozen. His attempt to keep siphoning money just triggered a criminal investigation. Not just for fraud, but for perjury and forgery from the original case. If the DA moved forward, he'd be facing potential jail time. I didn't celebrate. Not out loud. I just sat there, still and composed, as the bailiff handed Connor the court order and warned him that any further violation would result in immediate arrest. His empire was dust, and I didn't even have to scream or fight. I just moved piece by piece with strategy and patience until he checkmated himself. That's the thing about people like Connor. They play dirty, they cheat, but they forget that smart women don't need to stoop down to their level. We build a ladder, climb above them, and when they fall, it's not because we pushed, it's because we pulled the safety net they took for. Granted, the courtroom was colder that morning, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Everyone knew this wasn't just another hearing. This was the showdown. After months of deceit, asset hiding, and court violations, Connor's final hearing had arrived. But this time, it wasn't just a divorce dispute. It was criminal, fraud, perjury, forgery. The district attorney had taken the case, The charges were real. The stakes were higher than ever, and Connor knew it. He sat across from me, no longer the smooth-talking manipulator in designer suits. His hands shook slightly. His tie was crooked. Melissa was long gone, and so were his friends. No more allies, no more charm. Just a man who gambled everything and lost. When the judge entered, everyone stood, and the room held its breath. The prosecution laid out its case with icy precision: unauthorized asset transfers, forged signatures, shell corporations, lying under oath. Then they turned to me, asked if I would like to give a victim impact statement. I stood slowly, holding a single sheet of paper, but I didn't read from it. I looked Connor dead in the eyes and spoke plainly. You didn't just try to steal money. You tried to steal my voice, my identity, my dignity. You thought you could shatter me with a text message, gut our savings, and walk away clean. But what you didn't realize is that women like me, we don't break, we build. You forged documents, you lied to the court, and you tried to destroy me. But instead, you exposed yourself. Everything you did was a reflection of your fear, and now the law will finish what you started. There was silence when I finished. Even the bailiff shifted. The judge leaned forward slowly, gaze fixed on Connor. Mr. Whitmore, your behavior demonstrates a pattern of calculated, remorseless deceit. This court finds you guilty of contempt, fraud, and willful deception under oath. You are sentenced to 60 days in county jail, followed by supervised probation and full financial restitution. I exhaled, not with joy, but with relief. It was over. Connor was escorted out of the courtroom in handcuffs. He didn't look back at me. He didn't have to. I wasn't the same woman he walked away from. This wasn't just about divorce anymore. This was about accountability, about showing every woman who's been betrayed and discarded that justice is possible, even if you have to dig through fire to find it. And I found it, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted peace. That day, as I stepped out of the courthouse into the sunlight, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. For the first time in a long, long time. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was walking forward, head high, unstoppable. People think the verdict is just what the judge says: guilty, not guilty, fines, jail time, restitution. But that's not the real verdict, the one that matters most. The real verdict is the life you walk back into. The person you choose to become when the dust settles. Connor got 60 days in jail. 3 years of probation. He was ordered to pay back the full amount he tried to steal, with interest. His name is now associated with court records, financial, fraud alerts, and a revoked business license. That's his verdict. But mine? Peace, power, purpose. I built a business from the ashes of betrayal. I helped dozens, soon hundreds of women escape the same traps I once fell into. I looked in the mirror and didn't see a victim anymore. I saw a survivor, a warrior, a woman who didn't flinch when the fire came, because she was the fire. Connor messaged me once more after his release. No apology, no ownership, just a pitiful string of words: we were good once, I messed up, I miss how things used to be. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because the final verdict wasn't his to give. It was mine. And here it is. You don't get to break me and still own a single piece of my story. You don't get to run while I rebuild, and then peek through the window when you see the lights turned back on. You made your choice. You bet against me, and you lost. So no, Connor, we're not going back. You made sure of that when you typed. I want a divorce, and hit send without even the courage to face me. When you emptied the account, when you tried to destroy me from behind a lawyer's desk in a fake LLC, that was the day you made your final move. And this, everything I've rebuilt, everything I've reclaimed, this is checkmate. So here's my message to you, to every person like you. You can try to ruin someone quietly, but don't be surprised when the quiet one becomes the storm. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the court battles. It wasn't even the loneliness. The hardest part was learning to trust myself again. For a long time, I felt like a shadow of who I used to be. Broken, lost, unsure if I could ever rebuild. But every scar, every sleepless night, every tear paved the way for something stronger. Today, I stand not as a victim of my past, but as a bold woman who chose to rise. Someone who reclaimed her story and used her pain as fuel, not a prison. Ash and Grace continues to grow, helping women who thought their lives were over find new beginnings. I've found a family in these survivors, a sisterhood bound by resilience and hope. I've learned that sometimes the fire that burns you down is the very thing that lights your way forward. To anyone reading this who feels broken, betrayed, or lost, your story isn't over. You can rise. You can be bold. Because the power to rebuild isn't just in the courtrooms, or the settlements, or even in revenge. It's inside you, waiting, ready, and when you decide to claim it, no one can stop you. Sometimes life breaks us down in ways we never expect. But within those cracks, strength begins to grow. This is a story of betrayal and heartbreak, yes, but also one of courage, resilience, and rebirth. When everything seemed lost, she didn't just survive, she thrived. From shattered trust to unshakable power, she built a new life on her own terms. If you or someone you know is facing a similar battle, remember, you are not alone. You are stronger than you realize. And from the ashes, you too can rise, bold, fierce, and unstoppable. Thank you for listening. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and keep fighting for your own truth.